Hello, everyone, and welcome to our presentation. My name is Molly Winnett, and I will be presenting on behalf of my team, Ryan Johnson, Jason Gagnier, Michael Morton, and Louis Lemus. Together, we worked on deploying a Windows Server 2025 virtual machine in Microsoft Azure and configured it with Hyper-V and key server roles. In this presentation, I'll walk you through the process from start to finish, including setup, enabling Hyper-V, adding roles, and troubleshooting along the way. We will now go over the initial configuration of the virtual machine in Azure. To begin, we created a virtual machine in Azure. First, it's important to note that you need an Azure subscription before you can do this. Microsoft offers both a free trial and a free student subscription, which are both great options if you're just learning or testing. Once signed in, we went to the Azure portal and under Azure Services, selected Virtual Machine, then Create, where we then worked through the configuration steps. We carefully set up the basics, disks, networking, and management so the virtual machine would be compatible with Hyper-V, which we installed later on in the project. We chose the standard D2SV4 virtual machine size. This specific size supports Hyper-V, which was central to our project, and it provided the right balance of performance and cost. Larger sizes would have cost more without giving us extra benefits, while smaller ones wouldn't have supported virtualization. We also opened port 3389, which is the standard port for remote desktop connections. Since this was a team project, it was critical that all members could connect to the virtual machine to configure and test it. Finally, we enabled a system-assigned managed identity. That basically means Azure handled the login credentials for us. It also allowed us to connect securely using Microsoft Entra ID, so each of us could simply log in with our student email accounts instead of having to share one password. This made access and collaboration easier and kept the project more secure. A big part of the initial setup was assigning the correct roles so each team member could access the virtual machine properly. At the resource group level, we added contributor and security administrator rights. At the virtual machine level, we used virtual machine administrator login and virtual machine contributor. And at the network interface level, or NIC level, we assigned reader and network contributor. This layered approach gave everyone enough permissions to do their tasks without leaving the virtual machine wide open. We did run into our fair share of issues along the way. At first, our team members couldn't connect to the VM properly. After a lot of troubleshooting and back and forth, we found out the problem wasn't with networking, but with permissions. Using Azure's built-in troubleshooting tools, we realized we needed to assign additional network level roles. Once we made these changes, access worked for everyone. We will now get into the process of enabling Hyper-V on the Azure virtual machine. Next, Ryan worked on enabling Hyper-V inside our virtual machine. He connected to the VM using Remote Desktop Protocol, or RDP, by entering the VM's public IP address and a local admin account. After verifying the connection, he accepted the security certificate to start the remote session. Inside the virtual machine, Ryan opened PowerShell as an administrator and ran the following command. Install Windows feature, name Hyper-V, include management tools, restart. This command installed Hyper-V along with its management tools. Once the process finished, the virtual machine restarted automatically. After the restart, Hyper-V could be managed through Hyper-V Manager or with PowerShell. Ryan verified the installation by running the following command. Get Windows feature, name Hyper-V. The result showed installed true, which means installation was successful. One big issue we faced was that Hyper-V wouldn't install on our first virtual machine. The reason was that it had been created with something called Trusted Launch Security, which blocks nested virtualization. Once realizing the issue, we had two options. We could either create a second virtual machine using standard launch and use disk migration to transfer everything from the old trusted VM to the new one, or we could simply recreate our virtual machine using standard launch. In this instance, it was much easier and faster for us to create a new virtual machine entirely. Once we did that, the installation worked. Now, let's move on to adding server roles. Jason worked on setting up the web server role known as IIS, or Internet Information Services. He started by launching Server Manager on Windows Server 2025 and selecting Add Roles and Features. From there, he chose a role-based installation, selected Our Server, and added the Web Server IIS role. We kept the default role services, confirmed the selections, and clicked Install. This step was very important because IIS allows our server to host websites and web applications, making it a core function for many environments. After the installation, it was time to verify that IIS was working correctly. To do that, Jason opened a browser inside the virtual machine and navigated to localhost at http://localhost. Seeing the IIS welcome page confirmed that the web server was active. This step was simple but crucial because it proved that the role was installed correctly and that the server was ready to serve web content. Next, Jason installed the DHCP server role. DHCP stands for Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol, and it's what automatically assigns IP addresses to devices on a network. Without it, every device would have to be manually configured, which is inefficient. The process was similar to installing IIS. Open Server Manager, add roles and features, choose a role-based installation, and select the DHCP server role. Once installed, Jason completed the configuration using the DHCP wizard. This role was important because it gave our environment dynamic addressing, which makes managing larger networks much easier. To summarize, our project involved deploying and configuring a Windows Server 2025 virtual machine in Microsoft Azure. Along the way, we learned not just the technical steps, but also the practical challenges of working in a team environment on cloud infrastructure. One of the biggest takeaways was the importance of planning the VM setup correctly. Selecting the right machine size, opening the correct ports, and enabling managed identity were not just checkboxes. They directly affected how well our team could collaborate. Using our student email logins through Microsoft Entra ID streamlined access while also reinforcing the importance of identity management in a real-world setting. We also learned that permissions and roles can be tricky. Even though we assign contributor and administrator roles at the resource group and VM levels, we discovered that without network-level roles, access issues would continue. That showed us how layered security in Azure really works and why troubleshooting access problems requires looking at every layer. Enabling Hyper-V was another milestone. While the installation steps were straightforward, the initial failure due to trusted launch settings reminded us that default configurations are not always the best fit for every project. Switching to standard security taught us that understanding virtualization requirements is key when working in the cloud. Adding server roles like IIS and DHCP gave us insight into how servers move from being just set up to actually providing services. IIS gave us the ability to host and test web content, while DHCP highlighted how essential automation is in managing networks. These roles helped connect the dots between theory and hands-on application. Overall, the project gave us real experience in troubleshooting, role-based access, and the decision-making process that goes into configuring a secure and functional environment. More than just completing the steps, we learned how to think critically when something didn't work as expected, which is one of the most valuable lessons in IT. This experience helped us understand that deploying in the cloud isn't just about getting something to run, but it's about creating an environment that is secure, accessible, and scalable. Those are lessons that we can all carry into future courses and professional roles.